Guitar. How about this band? Give them some more love. Oh, that is so much fun. I love playing with great bands. When I walked into the building and I heard them practice, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good. So great to be back. I forgot that I was here 20 years ago. People reminded me. What a beautiful venue. So we're going to talk about, the talk is called Radical Gratitude, an Entrance into the Sacred. We're going to talk a little bit about regular old gratitude, and then we'll segue into radical gratitude. So how many people here, by a show of hands, have something, anything in your life you're grateful for? Anyone? It's unanimous. All right. So I'm not convinced, though. I want to hear what you're grateful for. So if you can call it out one at a time, if possible. What are you grateful for? Friends, family, Mother Earth. I knew you guys couldn't do this one at a time thing very well, but I can feel the energy. What was that? Hardships. Now you're getting into radical gratitude. You're jumping ahead. Right on. Well, we'll get to that. I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful to be here. I can't remember a time when I felt as much energy in a building this size before in my life. This is amazing what you guys are doing here. And the band and the soloist, Karen, is that how you say it? Kani. Beautiful, beautiful song. The energy. And I know that you guys are so grateful for this lady right here, because I know my dear friend, Reverend Alice. So, have you ever given a gift to someone and maybe you didn't even think that much about it? You just thought, this would be nice for that person. You give them the gift and they light up like the sun with gratitude. Is that not the best feeling in the world, to be the recipient of that kind of gratitude, right? Doesn't it make you want to give that person more stuff because it feels so good, right? And maybe you've had the opposite experience when you give somebody a gift, and you might have really put some thought into this one. They say, just what I always wanted. Want to give that person more stuff? Probably not. Well, guess what? The universal presence is the same way. Actually, before I go into that, I'm going to ask you, I'm pretty convinced now, but I want to do one more little ritual here. Stand if you are willing and able. And what we're going to do is we're going to say yes 3 times and throw our fists into the air for what we're grateful for. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes, yes, yes. Doesn't that feel good? Yes. All right. You can sit back down or stay standing or dance in the aisles, whatever will bring you joy, which is the theme of the workshop later on. So what I was about to say is, when we say yes to our gratitude, the universe wants to pour more good upon us, right? And when we are just what I always wanted, right, then guess what? The universe doesn't want to give us so much stuff. So here's where we get to radical gratitude. How many people here, by a show of hands, have anything that has been challenging, difficult, or painful come up in your life in the last year? Anyone? Guess what? I think we're unanimous again. So how many of you who just raised your hands have some gratitude, I know you do, have some gratitude for that particular situation? Anyone? A lot of you. You people are crazy. Some people might say, why would anyone be grateful for something difficult, challenging, painful? Do you want to share what it was? Well, okay. I'll tell you mine then. I'll tell you my story. So this is how the Magic of the Soul became the book that it became. So originally the book was going to be about the magic of the soul, how to manifest what you want, how to create what you want. And I thought I was pretty darn good at manifestation because I had a wonderful corporate job at the time, making a six-figure income. Had a wonderful marriage of 13 years. I was in great physical shape. I was a tennis pro in my 20s, a martial artist in my 30s. I was right around 40 years old. And guess what? A funny thing happened on the way to the magic of the soul. Everything fell apart. Became chronically ill, so ill that I couldn't get out of bed for 2 weeks at a time. The corporate job went away, the marriage ended. It felt like everything that I was identified with at an egoic level was stripped away, right? And so I thought, well, there's not anything magical about this in the beginning. I stopped writing the book for a while. And then something occurred to me. What the process that came out of this illness was recognizing that, no, actually, this is a good thing, right? And so the topic of the book became, rather than just how to manifest what we want. Yes, it's cool to manifest what we want. But what's even more magical is to appreciate what we have. And not only the things that obviously bring us joy, but especially the things that challenge us the most. And so I absolutely know that the book would not have become the best-selling book that it became, and curriculum for our movement, if not for that illness, right? So that was just one of the many, many miracles that came out of that experience. But what I learned, and what the message of the book is then is, as human beings, we may understand this, to be grateful for everything, and yet when something really hard comes up, what do we usually do? We resist at first, right? So the invitation then is to, rather than only look back and see the magic that came out of a difficult situation, is to look for it in the moment. What's the blessing in this moment, rather than just in retrospect? I like to talk about Suzanne Summers. How many remember Suzanne Summers? Even some of the younger people. Three's Company, later Thigh Master. Anyway, so this was several years ago. She was standing in front of, her home was burned down in one of the Malibu fires years ago. She was standing in front of the smoldering ashes of her home. And the interviewer said, "How do you feel right now?" And without hesitation, the first words out of her mouth were, "Something good will come from this." Do you feel the power in that? Do you actually know that we must know that something good had to come out of it? Something good always comes out of it. But she had to realize that good much sooner. And I had a friend that knew her and said she lost some really irreplaceable things in that fire, right? But that's where her consciousness was. Something good will come out of this. And she had to realize that much sooner than if she had been resisting it and thinking this is a horrible thing, right? And we had some fire. We get fires near us every year in Thousand Oaks, and I was thinking about that this year. We had some coming pretty close. How would I feel? And I thought, wow, I'd be sad for a few days probably. It would take me some time to adjust, but I know that my practice would go into something good's going to come out of this, right? So here's the quote from my book, The Magic of the Soul. When we're in the experience of appreciating the sacredness in life, we open to a world of unlimited possibilities. Because we are alert to the magic, we notice opportunities that we might otherwise miss. Life becomes filled with a deeper level of peace and meaning as we recognize every experience as magical and know that each experience leads us to an ever-increasing expression of our soul energy. If or when we are opening from the perspective of our soul, our timeless, infinite existence, we see the larger picture. Asking what there is to be grateful for in any and every circumstance is an entrance into the sacred. Let's take a deep breath into that. An entrance into the sacred through the simple practice of gratitude, radical gratitude. And I'll share you another story. Just recently, a few weeks ago, no, maybe a month ago, we had COVID. My wife and I had COVID. Oh, and by the way, since I just mentioned my wife, the magic that came out of the 13-year marriage that ended, which was a pretty happy marriage at the time, but it needed to end so that I could find my beloved soulmate, which we just celebrated our 23rd anniversary. And I'm friends with all my exes, by the way. So I ask you intuitively, isn't this quality of radical gratitude one of the expressions of consciousness that is present within all of the saints and sages and enlightened beings that we've heard about and know about through our scriptures and through different teachings? And our current most celebrated authors and teachers are saying all the same thing in different ways, right? So, for example, Byron Katie says, love everything, and she means it. She means everything. She talks about, sometimes use this quote when I teach her book, the time she put her hand into a champion juicer and heard crunching and said, the blood was so beautiful and radiant. I could go on and on about that quote. That's radical. That's further radical than I've realized yet. But Eckhart Tolle says, give up resistance to everything. August Gold in New York says, invite every experience, right? One of my clients came up with this one. Appreciate the manure in your life, for it is the compost for your flowering magnificence. Right? So I want to tell you a story about the primal fire when we did, and it was so fun. Somebody, I think it was Mary, right, came up to me and said, I went camping with you 20 years ago after I spoke here, I guess. So we had a great time up in the mountains, right? So I've done these retreats all over, and I did them for 10 years in Canada, 5 years in Saskatchewan. And so my client and friend, Carol Marriott, had a farm with, it was an equine-assisted learning center, right? Which means kind of a farm with horses on it, but very special horses who are trained to teach us about our authenticity in the different exercises that we do. And so we were preparing for the retreat. It was the first time I did it there. And oh gosh, I just thought of another story about that I'll tell in the workshop. Super inspiring about the horses. And so we're preparing for the retreat, and so Carol asked me and Kate, a woofer who was on the farm. You know what a woofer is? Yeah, tell me.
My daughter did it.
Yeah?
You volunteer, you go to a farm, a meadow, or a woofer. I know she did
Yes.
that in Kauai. She made $15 a week with no electricity and had the time of her life.
Right. Workers on organic farms. That's what that stands for. So anyway, Kate was this wonderful, she was a doctor from Ireland who was just traveling the world being a woofer. Anyway, so Carol asked us to go into the barn and clean it up. And so we're baling this hay with pitchforks into these slats that we removed in the ground, and there's a large pit in there. And apparently there had been pigs in the barn years before, and that's where their excrement went. So we're baling all this hay in there, and so there's one place where it was pretty compact. I'm like packing it down with my feet, and Carol says, be careful, you don't want to fall in there. And I said, I'm an athlete, I got this, don't worry. And so then I go over to this place where it wasn't so compact, and I step on it. I didn't fall in, but I did go from 6'1" to like 4'1" in a nanosecond, fell back on my back. And then I have to preface this next part. Do you remember the old Pink Panther movies with Peter Sellers, the bungling Inspector Clouseau, French inspector? And so Kate described it this way. She said, here I am baling hay with this somewhat famous author, and he just did this really stupid thing. I don't know what to say. I don't know what he's going to say. And so I stood up, dusted myself off, and said, every move I make is perfectly planned. And we laughed for a half an hour straight with our jaws aching, our stomachs were sore. And then something else happened. I forget what it was. Anyway, so and then that became like the mantra throughout the entire retreat. Anytime anyone did something stupid, every move I make is perfectly planned. And this is a spiritual practice. Anytime we can laugh at ourselves, we are aligning with spirit, right? And by the way, Robert Scheinfeld, the author of Busting Loose from the Money Game, which we're starting to teach on Wednesday, says this, and it's really interesting. I'm going to talk more about this in the workshop today, that we're creating our reality not merely from our thinking, as we often think or are taught, and not even from our personal intention. We're creating our reality always from the presence and the intentionality of our expanded soul self, right? And therefore, everything is always for us, right? And so a woman came up to me after I talked about this several years ago up in Northern California. And she came up after the service and she said, I just spilled coffee on my new dress, and I felt my face getting red and my blood heating up. And then she remembered, every move I make is perfectly planned. And she started laughing out loud, right? And so the truth is, every move we make is perfectly planned by our soul. We're never in the wrong place. You know, as human beings, we tend to look at how far. I was telling this to a client the other day. You know, some people have told me, before I was on a spiritual path, when I was kind of clueless, I was happier then. Because when we get on a spiritual path, now we tend to compare ourselves to the ideal to which we are moving, right? And we forget to look at how far we've come. But the truth is that every one of us, every one of you is perfect just the way you are, not just in the spiritual sense, but in your humanness, in all of your perfect imperfections. Take a deep breath into this. Isn't it just relaxing to let go and think, I'm perfect just the way I am? Which means that anything that's added from this moment onward is icing on an already perfect cake. Doesn't that feel good? So let me tell you about the class a little bit and then about the workshop. So the class, Busting Loose from the Money Game, it's really not so much about money as it is about consciousness. And it's really about non-attachment. So here's a quote from the book that'll give you a sense of it. And if you don't resonate with this, don't take the class. But the interesting thing is it's completely illogical how this sounds. And yet I see people nodding when I say it in front of large groups of people. When you get to the place in consciousness where you realize it's no better to have $1 million than it is to owe $1 million, then you'll have the consciousness that will allow you to create whatever you want with a snap of your fingers. Yes? You see, and the way that and this isn't a new idea. This is basic Buddhism, non-attachment, right? But the author explains it in modern day terms in this way. That if I'm saying one thing in the world of form, having money is better than not having money. Having perfect health is better than not having perfect health. Having my soulmate is better than not having my soulmate. I'm saying that the world of form has power over my inner experience, which then makes me somewhat powerless over the world of form. But when I realize, and this is how I sum up the book, when I am simply living consistently from an inner experience of freedom, joy, love, all spiritual qualities, everything in life lines up with that. instead of the world of form informing my inner experience starts informing the world of form. It's always an inside-out game, but we forget that, don't we? We forget it when we get that diagnosis that we don't want, or we see our finances go down because the market goes down or something. We forget. So easy to forget. It's always about how I feel inside. If I feel abundant inside, abundance must follow. We know that from our teaching, right? But it's so easy to get seduced by the reality. Robert Scheinfeld says that everything is an illusion in life, especially money. It's not real. It's a symbol. Everything that we see is a symbol of something deeper. Money is a symbol of appreciation. When I consistently translate the word money to appreciation, and the more I do that, the more abundant my life becomes. Because I wouldn't say, I don't have enough appreciation to afford that. That doesn't make sense, right? Appreciation's infinite. I might say, the level of appreciation being called for this item is not the level of appreciation I have for it. There's not a match there. But that's not as limiting as I can't afford it, right? So, the workshop. So the workshop really was born out of, and I wanted to say one other quote from my book, The Magic of the Soul, that the most powerful consciousness for manifesting what we want is A, being really clear, speaking it out to the universe like we do in spiritual mind treatment, and on the other side of that coin, being non-attached to when, how, or if it occurs. Because if I'm attached to how it's going to occur, then I'm going to have some negative energy going into what I don't want, right? So, I say my spiritual mind treatment, and I let it go. As the last step says, just let it go, right? Turn it over to Spirit. And then don't think, how many people have come up to me after a spiritual mind treatment and say, oh, but. No, we don't do buts now. We're in the consciousness, right? So the class, the workshop is born out of this teaching from Busting Loose in the Money Game, which, as I said, is all about living from an inner experience of joy. And in the workshop, I'm going to define joy in a different way. I'll give you a little taste of that. It's not the opposite of sadness. That's happiness. That's a personal experience. As you said in the meditation, it's a pervasive spiritual quality that can even be present in moments of despair or loss, right? And so the workshop is all about living from that and making decisions in our life through what will bring us the most long-term joy. It's long-term. It's never instant gratification or happiness. It's long-term. How will I feel a year from now if I do this? Now I'm doing things. I was talking to someone earlier, said, I got to discipline myself more. Discipline for most people means forcing myself to do something I don't want to do, right? So rather than doing it for the should or the have to, we learn how to do it for the long-term joy. And I tell you what, when we do things for the joy of it, the exponentially better are the results, okay? So I'm going to tell you one little joke here and one more story, and then we're done. So there were these two brothers. One, Bob, is a cat lover, and Ed, his brother, hates cats. So Bob's going away on a vacation, and he thinks, well, where am I going to leave my cat? I could leave it with Ed, but he hates cats. But then again, Ed's done a great job taking care of our elderly mother. So I guess if I can trust my mother with Ed, I ought to be able to trust my cat, Perky was his name. And so Bob drops Perky off at Ed's place, goes on vacation, comes back a couple weeks later, calls him up and says, hey, brother, how you doing? How's mom doing? How's my beloved Perky? And Ed says, well, I got some bad news for you, brother. Perky died, and, mom's calling, got to go, click. And Bob is just overwrought with grief, not only about the passing of his beloved cat, but the fact that the uncaring way in which his brother Ed gave him the news. So he grieves the loss and calls his brother a couple days later and says, you know, Ed, I got to tell you, it really hurt my feelings the way you gave me the news. And Ed says, well, I'm sorry, brother. I guess I could have been more gentle and more compassionate. And so Bob says, well, I forgive you, brother. And Bob then says, how's Mom doing? And Ed says, Mom's up on the roof playing. Oh, I forgot a part of the joke. That is the worst punchline. I feel like starting over. I'll tell you what it was so you'll get it, even though I completely blew it now, but that's okay. I see the magic in it. So Ed said, I could have said, or Bob said to Ed, I could have said, Perky's up on the roof playing. And then when I came and picked him up, you could have said, oh, we did everything we could, but Perky died. So then Ed says to Bob, Mom's up on the roof playing. Anyway, it was a really funny joke the last time I told it. And by the way, in the workshop today, we're going to, we're going to tell a few jokes, and they'll be better than that one. I guarantee it. So for the workshop, it would be my wish that everyone here could attend, because the energy is fantastic. Everybody's just going to be walking on air when we leave it. So if you don't have plans, come join us. If you do have plans, change them. And if you absolutely can't change them, sign up on our mailing list. Next time we're around, we'll let you know. So final story then is I was speaking at Asilomar at our annual conference, and this was not too long after The Magic of the Soul came out, many, many years ago. And people, practitioners and ministers and congregants were coming up to me and thanking me for writing the book. But this one minister, a very respected minister in our movement, came up to me, the greatest compliment I ever got. She put her hands on my shoulders. She looked at me in the eyes, and she said, I want to thank you for writing this book. I was in the third week teaching it to my congregation, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she said, if it was not the synchronicity of teaching that chapter, which was all about loving ourselves, not only because of how cool we are, but because of our weaknesses and the possibility of attracting an illness like this. If it wasn't for that synchronicity, I would have judged myself. I would have, in fact, beat myself up a bit. And I absolutely know, she said, that my healing would not have happened as fast or as completely if not for having that arrive in my life at that perfect time, right? And that's the power of love. And so this phrasing came to me recently, talking to a client about self-love. We were talking about self-love, and the phrasing that came to me is, when I love myself unconditionally, what I realize is I am not myself. I am in fact the self. I am in fact pure love. And so are you, my friends. Thank you. Thank you. So let's pray. Let's take a deep healing breath and let out a big heartful sigh. Beautiful. Just sink into it. I love that exhale, because as soon as that exhale happens, Spirit comes flooding in, and we recognize that we're one with this infinite presence of pure, unconditional love and light, freedom and joy, all the qualities of Spirit. And I want to invite you for a moment to really make this practical. Think about a situation in your life that maybe is uncomfortable, that maybe you're resisting a bit or maybe a lot. And just ask, what would it be like if I let go of the resistance? Doesn't mean I won't still take action to improve things, but I'll be accepting and being in gratitude for it as a teacher in my life. Take a deep breath into whatever feeling comes with that. I'm feeling the peace. The more non-attached we are, the more peace we have inside. The more peace we have inside, the more power we have to create what we want. So you see yourself moving forward now, living from a place of openness, a place of curiosity, a place of willingness to receive whatever the universe, whatever your soul has provided for you. And forgiving yourself when you're not, even when you resist. That's okay too. That's part of the journey. You're perfect just the way you are. You are pure love. We turn this truth over to Spirit because we know it is so, and together we say, and so it is.